Okay. In this video, I want to talk about what makes a good remake actually. Since my last video was also about remakes being the main offering today, for the most part, the main attraction in a lot of cases. But I don't think remake are bad per se. It's just that when they when they're the main offering, like, or at least they are very prevalent, like in today's market, yeah, that's bad because there's a lack of new games being made in favor of remasters and remakes, because of course they are cheaper to produce, especially remasters. But yeah, like remakes, what makes a good remake? In my opinion, I've mentioned this other times as well in other videos, but a remake, for me to be considered valid, it has to have been worked on by a good chunk of the people that worked on the original, because I want to see the vision of the original team, or at least most of the original team that worked on the original game, to see what they would have made differently, like what aspect of the game they would have done differently with the new knowledge they have, as opposed to, of course, to before when they first worked on the original game. And that's one of the main things, because honestly, I don't care about remakes. Like the people who were in school, in elementary school, when the originals came out, I don't care about remakes made by those people, honestly. Because I mean, I consider games also not only a work of art, but they can be a work of art. So I wanna see the original vision of an extra original vision from the original team, if possible. Because like, how can I take seriously a remake that's done by a complete stranger, like 20 years later? So that's one thing. And yeah, there are some remakes that call in people from the old guard to as consultants. Honestly, even those are highly westernized. They are different. Like, I think the Silent Hill 2 remake calls in, like, they have a couple people from the old team working on the, I mean, working. They are offering advice. They were called in as consultants, but the main work is being done by, of course, by Blooper Team. So it's their vision mostly. That's what I mean. Like, you don't see me asking for remakes anymore. I was one of the people that back in the early 2000s, was asking for a Resident Evil 2 remake done like in the style of the Resident Evil 1 remake. I wanted a Resident Evil 2 remake like that one, made by most of the people that were still working at Capcom, because at the time the people who worked on Resident Evil 2 were still working at Capcom. So it was only after that most of them left. So I stopped asking for a remake because I knew it just wouldn't be the same if made by other people. And in fact, when Resident Evil 2 remake came out, it just wasn't a good remake in my opinion. I made a 2-hour video on it, so go watch that. But in definitive, I think that they have changed the tone. They have changed the tone of the story, the characters, the writing, the atmosphere too much. It's a good game, but it's a bad remake, in my opinion. They've changed too much stuff. And this is why, like, I think the remakes should be done mostly by the same team that worked on the original game. Resident Evil 1 Remake is a sort of an exception because it was worked on by most of the team, of the original team. The problem is that the guy who was mostly responsible for what Resident Evil 1 was did not work on the remake because he was pushed out of Capcom. I also mentioned this in my 2 hours video. So yeah, if that person, which is Kenichi Wa, would have worked on Resident Evil 1 remake, that would have been even better in my opinion. But sadly, he didn't. So Resident Evil 1 remake is the best remake in the Resident Evil series. Is okay, but it could have been better. It could have been much better. As it is now, it's a very good game, but it's not a masterpiece. Looking back on it, I have to say I don't consider it a masterpiece anymore, but it's a very good game for sure. In terms of gameplay, I don't think a remake necessarily has to share the same type of gameplay as the original. Of course, it is better if it does, in my opinion, but it's not necessary. Like, I'm not gonna push down a notch a game like a Resident Evil remake just because it has a different gameplay. But it does have to feel old school to be good to me. Because if you start adding all this stupid inertia bullshit, reticle bloom, delay in the controls, yeah, no, that's not gonna fly. You need to make the controls snappy. Because that's not gonna be old school anymore. If it plays like modern slop, it's not an old school type of remake. So I'm not against remakes being different in terms of gameplay, but it has to play in a certain way because otherwise, what the fuck are you doing? Just make a different IP at this point. Because I've said it again before. I think, for example, Resident Evil 4 Remake and 2 Remake, I would have liked them way more if they didn't have the Resident Evil 2 and 4 names attached to it. Because they are not bad games per se, even though Resident Evil 4 has a lot of problems, the remake. They're still okay games, they're enjoyable, I have enjoyed them, but it just... like seeing those games with that name on it just puts a bad taste in my mouth because they are just too different. They just have a different tone. They are too different overall, and I don't consider a game superior just because it plays like Last of Us and has an over-the-shoulder camera. No, that's not what makes a game. When it comes to at least games like Resident Evils, when it comes to Resident Evils, I consider all the aspects of the remake or the game in general. So the gameplay, of course, the changes to the story, the tone, the setting, the acting, the writing. So I consider all of that in a remake of a game I care about. So you'll never see me just say, oh, Resident Evil 2 Remake is better than the original because it plays like Last of Us, for example. No, you won't see me say that. At least when it comes to games I care about. Now, if they remake a game I have no attachment to that played like shit, like Devil May Cry 2, and maybe they change a bunch of stuff about the gameplay, no, I'm not gonna complain. I'm not gonna complain, of course, because Devil May Cry 2 played like ass, in that sense. Now, when it comes to remaking a game, honestly, I don't really agree with the fact of remaking games that are already good, in the sense that even their gameplay is up to date. So games like Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, I wasn't really in favor of a remake of those games. Because I'm more of the idea that the first games that should be remade are the ones that like played badly So, or at least they have a lot of flaws. So, like for example, a perfect candidate for a remake, still talking about Resident Evil, would be Resident Evil Zero, which is it's not a bad game, but it has a lot of flaws. Honestly, it was quite disappointing even when it came out. So that would have been the perfect game to remake first, in my opinion. But no, of course they went with Resident Evil 2 and 4 because they are the most popular entries. Which were, I mean, I can see why Resident Evil 2 was remade, but Resident Evil 4, that was a cash grab because there's a group of people that just won't play old games no matter what, even if they still hold up very well. Like Dead Space 1 still holds up very well. There's people who won't play that game because it's old to them. This is a mental illness, by the way. But yeah, that's how it works, and that's why they will always remake these games if possible, even a game that didn't need one. So to conclude, what to say? I mean, what do I think is a good remake? Like a good example would be the Resident Evil 1 remake, of course, because it checks almost all the boxes of the things I've mentioned in the video. It adds a lot of stuff. It removes very little, if anything. No, I mean, some things they have been removed, like the characters' interactions. I did mention this in my Resident Evil 1 remake video, so go check it out if you want. But yeah, a good remake shouldn't remove anything if possible. It should only add or build upon what is already there. So another reason why I'm not crazy about the modern Resident Evil remakes. They removed stuff. So they should expand and build upon that. So, like, a good remake will be a game that's possibly been worked on by the original team or most of it. They don't have to change things for the worse. They have to change things that needed to be changed, like things that make the game play badly, glaring flaws. But other than that, they should build upon the foundation of the game. Then the gameplay can play. I mean, like I said, it's better if it plays the same, or like it plays like an improved version of the same game. But it's fine even if they change the gameplay. It's not the end of the world, honestly. And they don't. They shouldn't change the tone, of course, either. But in today's market, it's almost impossible. Everything is westernized, everything is sterilized, is toned down. So you won't probably ever see a faithful remake in terms of tone of an old game. So also that's why another reason I don't want remakes now, because they just won't be the same for the most part. Modern remakes for the most part are disappointing. Are remakes made for modern audiences, so not people like me or people who have been playing games for a while. They're mostly all flash without substance. Graphics, like the modern remake is pretty much just slap the TPS control scheme on the game, add some dumb puzzles like push the dumpster to climb into the window, and that's it. But that's not what makes a good remake. You have to consider everything: the tone, the music, the writing, the art style as well. But they just focus on a couple of aspects and they ignore everything else. That's why most remakes today are not up to par, in my opinion. So, That's what I said. The almost perfect blueprint of a remake is Resident Evil 1. Made by the original team, mostly. Uh, Plays the same or very similar. They didn't change anything, if or very little, but they build upon it. They make the gameplay more interesting if possible, and that's it. That's what you have to do. You don't have to change much. But no, people are software houses are afraid of the bad words now, so you won't ever see a remake with the same tone probably, especially if it's a Japanese game made in the 90s or early 2000s. Look at Resident Evil 4. The writing has been completely dumped down. Same with all the jokes. Feel it feels like a boomer version. Resident Evil 4 remake feels like a boomer version of Resident Evil. It's just so inoffensive. It's so inoffensive that it becomes offensive. That's how it works. Because games need to be taken seriously now. You can't joke about. You can make an in-game joke now. Everything is to be serious, but by doing so, the game feels even dumber. Because why will you do that? When something takes itself too seriously, and it clearly wasn't in the initial idea for the game to take itself too seriously, yeah, that's not gonna work. But yeah, a lot of rambling in this video. But I think I've explained for the most part what I think is a good remake, how a good remake should be. I mean, when it comes to a remaster, just port the game, improve it graphically, add some quality of life options, but don't change anything else. That's very easy. But sometimes they manage to fuck it up, even that. So yeah, as usual, let me know your thoughts and I'll catch you soon. Bye bye.